Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into a stunning development that has taken the world by surprise. Belarus, one of Russia's closest allies, is now witnessing troops marching against Vladimir Putin's rule. What seemed unthinkable just months ago is now unfolding in real time, and it's sending shockwaves not only through Moscow, but across Europe and beyond. For years, Belarus has been seen as the Kremlin's most loyal partner, a country whose leader, Alexander Lukashenko, depended heavily on Russian support to maintain his grip on power. But recent events suggest that alliance might be fracturing, and the consequences could reshape the balance of power in Eastern Europe. To understand how we got here, we need to look at the deep ties between Belarus and Russia. Ever since the collapse of the Soviet Union, Belarus has remained closely linked to Moscow both economically and militarily. Russia has provided billions in subsidies, energy discounts, and political backing to Lukashenko's regime, especially after the disputed 2020 Belarusian elections that sparked mass protests. At that time, Putin threw his full weight behind Lukashenko, helping him crush opposition movements and restore control. In return, Lukashenko opened Belarusian territory to Russian troops, missiles, and air operations, especially during the early stages of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But now, the tide seems to be turning. Reports from independent sources, satellite images, and eyewitness accounts suggest that segments of the Belarusian military have begun to express open defiance toward the Kremlin's influence. Small-scale troop movements, believed to be loyal to nationalist and anti-Russian factions, have reportedly taken place in several regions near Minsk and along the western border. The message coming from these forces appears clear: Belarus should no longer serve as a puppet state for Russia's imperial ambitions. Behind this sudden shift are a number of complex factors. First, there's growing fatigue among Belarusian citizens over their country's involvement in a war they never wanted. The Ukraine conflict has brought severe economic sanctions, isolation from the West, and international condemnation. While Lukashenko initially managed to balance between supporting Moscow and avoiding direct participation in the war, recent pressure from the Kremlin to send Belarusian troops into Ukraine has crossed a red line for many in his own military. Officers who have long sworn allegiance to defend Belarus, not Russia, are reportedly refusing to obey orders that align them directly with the Kremlin's war machine. Another major factor is the internal weakness of the Russian regime itself. As the war in Ukraine drags on and Russia suffers from manpower shortages, sanctions, and battlefield setbacks, Moscow's ability to control its allies is diminishing. Many within the Belarusian power structure sense that Putin's influence is no longer absolute. Some see an opportunity to reclaim full sovereignty for Belarus and distance the nation from what many now perceive as a losing side. Intelligence reports suggest that Western countries are quietly monitoring these developments, and while they're not directly involved, they're certainly encouraged by the possibility of a rift between Minsk and Moscow. Social unrest has also been brewing among ordinary Belarusians. The population has faced inflation, unemployment, and political oppression for years, and the idea that their young men could be sent to die in Ukraine has ignited anger even among Lukashenko's traditional supporters. Small anti-war protests have reappeared, and underground opposition groups that went silent after 2020 are resurfacing, using encrypted channels to coordinate messaging and spread footage of troop defiance. These signs point to a possible awakening within Belarus, one that even state-controlled media can no longer completely suppress. What makes this situation even more volatile is Lukashenko's delicate position. On one hand, he owes his survival to Putin's political and financial backing. On the other, He knows that being too dependent on Moscow could drag Belarus into complete subservience or even annexation. Some analysts believe that Lukashenko himself may be subtly allowing anti-Putin sentiments to grow within his ranks as a bargaining chip, a way to show the Kremlin that Belarus cannot be pushed too far. Others think he's losing control altogether, as divisions inside the military and intelligence community widen. There are also rumors of direct confrontations between pro-Russian and nationalist factions within the Belarusian armed forces. Some units have allegedly refused to participate in joint exercises with Russian troops, while others have redeployed away from Russian positions. Though official confirmation is limited, such reports fit a broader pattern of instability spreading through the region. The symbolism of Belarusian troops marching not under the Russian tricolor, but under their own historic white flags once banned by Lukashenko has electrified exiled opposition figures and democratic movements across Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, the Kremlin is reacting with visible alarm. Russian state media is trying to downplay the situation, labeling the reports as Western propaganda or isolated disciplinary issues. But behind the scenes, Moscow is said to be deploying more intelligence operatives to Belarus, and there are unconfirmed reports of Russian advisors being recalled from Minsk due to security concerns. For Putin, losing Belarus would be catastrophic. The country serves as a critical buffer state between Russia and NATO, as well as a key launch pad for military operations. If Belarus slips out of Russia's orbit, it would mark one of the biggest geopolitical defeats of his rule, possibly even more significant than the setbacks in Ukraine. The global reaction has been cautious but alert. European leaders are watching closely, recognizing that any instability in Belarus could spill over into neighboring countries like Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. NATO has reportedly increased surveillance along the eastern flank, wary of potential Russian countermeasures or provocations. At the same time, Ukrainian officials have welcomed the possibility of Belarus distancing itself from Moscow, saying it could ease pressure on Ukraine's northern borders and weaken Russia's war logistics. For now, the situation remains fluid and unpredictable. Whether this movement within Belarus grows into a full-fledged rebellion, a political realignment, or a controlled show of defiance remains to be seen. What's certain is that the old order between Minsk and Moscow is cracking. The once unshakable image of unity between Putin and Lukashenko is fading fast, replaced by uncertainty, suspicion, and a rising sense of nationalism inside Belarus. In the long run, this moment could define Belarus's future. If the country manages to assert its independence, it could realign itself toward neutrality or even seek a cautious rapprochement with the West. On the other hand, if Putin feels cornered, he could attempt to tighten control through direct military or political intervention, risking a dangerous escalation. Either way, Belarus's apparent defiance has already sent a powerful message that even Moscow's closest allies are no longer immune to the growing cracks in Putin's rule. The world now waits to see how both Lukashenko and Putin respond. Will Belarus reclaim its sovereignty, or will Moscow crush the rebellion before it spreads? One thing is clear, the echoes of this moment will resonate far beyond Minsk. What happens next could redefine the fate of not just Belarus and Russia, but the entire post-Soviet landscape.